you notice it's not a monoculture. There are fruit trees scattered around in the vineyard. There are olive trees. One thing, olive trees are pretty much everywhere. They go particularly well with vines because they don't seem to be, there doesn't seem to be any competition between olive trees and vines, and so you often find olive trees in the vineyards. And again, that would have been obviously important for the people who lived here because they have their olive oil as well.
Sure.
The way these vineyards were planted was extremely laborious, because basically what you would do, in order to plant a vine, you would start digging, right? And you would find stones.
Yeah, right.
That was pretty inevitable. So you get to your stones, and what you do is you pull out your stones and you pile them up on the boulders that you can't get out. So if you look, wherever there's a wall, there's an outcrop of rock that they couldn't dig out. You can see there, that
right,
wall.
yeah.
Okay. And if you look down here as well, there you go. They couldn't get this big outcrop out, so they put a wall on top. And there again you can see. So basically the seams of rock would determine where the walls were.
Ah.
So as they were planting, they were building the walls. And this meant it was an incredibly laborious process, obviously. So you would only be able to plant a few dozen vines a year, probably. So the idea that we think of now is we have a vineyard planted in the year 2000. In those days, there was absolutely no concept of that. This vine has had its last. It was actually dry last year, you can see. But what will happen is a vine will get to a certain age and it will die. Okay. So what we'll be doing is, in the spring, we're going to plant a bit of rootstock here, and we should. Let me see if I can find. It's basically the replanting is this continual cycle. Right, there's a rootstock there. That was planted last spring. Okay.
Yes, come up.
Then this spring we'll
one,
be able.
yeah.
That one. We'll be able to graft it. That one there has just been grafted, and this one was probably grafted 2 years ago. So what you have is a complete mixture of ages. As one vine dies, you plant your rootstock, you let it grow up, you graft the rootstock, and then you train a new vine on it. You see, the problem with the walls is they're made out of really very soft stone. You know, if you can break it up with your hands, what will happen is basically this effectively rots, this schist, and after many years, you do get these sort of stones that will just sort of come apart a bit, and this happens. Again, you can see that there's an outcrop there that they weren't able to dig out, so again it forms the basis of the wall. One thing that you do notice here is that the rows are very close together. Basically, it's just a question of optimizing space. And if you're not using tractors, then it really doesn't matter. As long as you can fit between the rows, which you can, that's enough. So here you're looking at, I don't know, about 1 meter 20 or 30 probably. Now we have all of our rows, whether they're on terraces or on vertical plantings. Obviously, so the machinery is compatible. I mean, if you've got a sprayer, for instance, you don't want to have the rows at different widths. So now we plant everything at 2 meters. We have little tractors, which are I think 1 meter 20 wide, which means that when the foliage is sort of out, then they can fit through the vineyard. What you have here is a semi-modern vineyard. It still suffers from the stone post, and actually what those guys are doing up there, I've asked them to replace all the broken stones. We're actually, you can see, we're replacing the stones now. This has been put here because there's actually a bit missing here.
And you grow bananas here?
Sorry?
You grow bananas here too? Grapes and bananas?
Yeah, we do.
Wow.
Remember I was saying it wasn't a monoculture. You have your vegetable patch, you have your fruit, and a small banana tree.
Fabulous.
Behind you is a vineyard that we actually planted this year. It's much more modern, it's conventional, it's got the stone posts. We're using the grow tubes, although I'm not really sure that they make much of a difference. These are much more conventional vineyards. There's just one thing I'd like to point out here, which is worth looking at. This vine appears to have a very low cordon. Now, it didn't start off like that. What you have here is very clear evidence of erosion, right? And that is one of the problems that I have been addressing recently with these vertical plantings. And you can see now this has got a lovely cover crop. It makes a huge difference. The cover crop's only been here for about 3 years, so I mean all this earth got here before the cover crop was installed. But erosion is definitely an issue in the vertical plantings. It's something that we've been addressing quite seriously. I actually bought quite an expensive bit of equipment called a rainfall simulator, which is it's just a very precise shower head. It's very expensive because you have to calibrate, and it debits exactly the same number of drops per minute with the right pressure, because if the temperature changes, oddly enough, a couple of degrees will influence how fast the water runs. So you have to calibrate this machine very carefully, and you stick it on the ground, and then it has a sort of a funnel plate that catches the runoff, and you filter the runoff, and you weigh how much soil that you've washed off, and then you can multiply up your annual rainfall by the area you've done it on, and you get to quite frightening figures, close to 2 tons of soil per hectare per year that are being lost in unprotected vineyards. And you can see, a lot of soil has accumulated. It's filled in almost half a metre. What I did was I then cover cropped the vineyards, and even after we had mowed it in the summer, so it was dry. Sorry.
Miles, can I ask you a quick question?
Yes.
Video. So you described quite a bit of the challenges you've got specific to the Douro and these vineyards. What's the biggest pain, aside from wine critics, what's the biggest pain in the ass that you're dealing with in the vineyard?
Clearly the bureaucracy. Unbelievable amount of bureaucracy, particularly with new plantings. The Douro suffers, Douro in particular, but Portugal really suffers from the old world bureaucracy, and we lose many hours every week dealing with official paperwork. Basically, I mean that's.
So you like filling out paperwork, is what you're saying?
Hate it.
Okay.
Hate it. But the new plantations are, you have this guy who just phoned me, who we saw at the bottom there. It was another inspection, either from the guys who are, it could be the environmental people, or it could be the IVDP, or it could be the guys who are going to pay for the subsidies. I got in trouble last year for a new plantation because they said you haven't asked for permission to rip out any olive trees. And I said, no, I didn't. And they said, oh, well, you have to. I said, well, I didn't ask for it because I don't want to rip out any olive trees. They said, oh, but then you have to tell us that you don't want to. And then we had another thing. And this has just happened, this phone call I just got now was exactly the same thing. You haven't asked for permission to alter the profile of the terrain. So, well, no, we didn't. It's flat.